Your jump to freelance starts here. Welcome to the Jump Moment.
You have a baby on the way and you are brought into the HR office and laid off. That was the beginning of Tyler's jump moment. And that's what we're going to talk about today on the podcast. In the midst of this really complicated, really scary situation, Tyler shares with us his response, what he did, and even in a lot of ways, how he prepared for his jump moment ahead of time. One of the things that I really appreciated that he shared with us was some insights on how to build a business that you actually love being a part of. That was a part of him learning as he built. And I think that's a great insight for us as we're, for many, considering the jump to freelance. With that in mind, I want to share a book recommendation with you, The 6 Types of Working Genius. This is a book by Patrick Lencioni. Everything I've read by him has been incredibly helpful for me personally. They're actually typically really, really enjoyable reads. But this book, The 6 Types of Working Genius, is really helpful for us as we look to understand who we are. And this matters so much, like Tyler mentions, we want to build a business that we love. We want to find joy in our work. That's one of the promises of freelance, but you actually have to be pretty intentional about it because business doesn't always naturally align with the joy or the things that we love doing most. I know for me personally, I've had many encounters and many really client relationships where I haven't loved the work that I'm doing. I just took it because it paid money. And while that is sometimes necessary in order for us to, get through the month or whatever the need is, it's not a good long-term strategy. And so this book with Patrick Lencioni is both a great way for you to support the show through the affiliate link, but also a great way for you to get insight into who you are and how you're built so that you can build a business that you love. All right, let's move into the conversation with Tyler. The place I always love starting is just getting to know you, getting to know where you're coming from, what you do in your business. So tell me a little bit, what's your background right now? Like, what are you doing today in terms of business?
Yeah, so I'm one of the co-founders of Firm Foundations Marketing. So we're a church growth consulting agency that really focuses on helping churches leverage market research to reach the right people with the right message. Sort of the reason why we even are in that space is we had found so many people, or so many churches rather, desire to grow, but in doing so, they kind of jump to popular tactics or like, what's the mega church doing, or importing other methodologies from other areas that really aren't being contextualized to their circumstances. And so when they do that, like they often fail to make any kind of impact, right? And the cycle just continues. And I was getting sick of seeing people spin their wheels and spend their money doing tactics and, like buying Facebook ads and all that kind of stuff and being like, it's not working. Well, it's not the thing, it's the context that we need to bring it back to. And so in our work with hundreds of churches all over the country, we've seen congregations really get refocused and re-energized when leadership takes the time to understand their ideal audience and what they need so that they can align their methods and message to reach more of them. So, you'd be surprised maybe that like not every church should be on social media all the time. Like there's been churches that we said, hey, actually bulletin boards will work really well for you, right? Like there's these things that kind of go against the norm that we're used to hearing, or like the, what younger people want or something like that. And that's why we go back to the audience research, because it's localized, it's contextualized, and it stops us from guessing. And I think that is where the big value is. And so, it's what we've been doing for almost 7 years now. And I love it.
That's great. I love that. And it's interesting because like that's true of any industry, if you have a professional sports team and you're trying to sell it to people that don't like sports, you're going to have a problem. And so I love that. That's the primary focus with, you're taking an industry, a nonprofit, a church that you care about, and then applying these strategies that can help it be successful. I think that's a great thing. So what did life look like before you started this business? You said 7 years ago now?
Yeah, almost. It'll be 7 years in March 2025.
Okay.
Before that, I would like to say I was living fairly comfortably. I had a corporate job and I worked at the same place right out of college. Was there for about 12 years, worked my way up and, had all kinds of experiences and, reporting to the CFO and all that kind of stuff. And, life was good. I got to play with research, which is part of why it's part of our business now. I got to really spend a lot of time with a variety. So I was in the newspaper industry in the marketing department. And so we got to help promote a variety of businesses, our advertisers, as well as the newspaper itself. And so what I really enjoyed is it gave me a wide range of experiences, again, from small local businesses to bigger brands. And I think that really paved the way for, again, our focus on sort of contextualizing like what's going to work for who we are and who we're trying to reach, rather than just kind of, copy and paste the game plan from somewhere else.
That's great.
Yeah, I was there for 12 years.
So that's a big shift then, from from being in a place for a long period of time. Longevity, I think, is something that's more and more rare as time passes. So you now run your own thing. What was there something like? Did you always want to do that? As you're kind of like, I know for me there were stretches of time where my alarm would go off. I'm like, I gotta go into work today. Was there that brewing in you? Did you always have that desire to kind of start your own thing?
So I actually kind of come from an entrepreneurial family, which honestly I hadn't really thought about until I started doing my own thing. It made me pause and look back, like, man, my dad runs his own business, my mom ran her own business, my grandparents, like, like it goes back generations. And so that has always been sort of my background. But even in college, I ran an eBay business out of my dorm room and probably drove my roommates crazy. But, like doing $30,000 a year out of your dorm room was pretty good money back then.
That's great.
And so like I've always had sort of that spirit in me to make something from nothing or whatever. But it wasn't part of my plan, so to speak. I wouldn't say I dreamed to go out and do this, but I always had it in me. And like I said, life was comfortable. I'd moved up the corporate ladder, pay was good. There's bad days, but I thoroughly enjoyed my job. And so this was not the plan. I think honestly, that was one of the most challenging things when I suddenly had to, make that jump, if you will. Was figuring out how to do it because I didn't have the planning period. It was sort of figure it out as we go. And
so on that, what was that? Like, what was that moment? What was that trigger? Obviously the name of the podcast is The Jump Moment. So this is the thing, what was it? What was that catalyst for you?
So the marketing department was brought up to HR and said, hey, we're eliminating the department.
Okay. That's a jump moment.
I was laid off, which again I didn't see coming. The specific areas I was over were profitable, all those kinds of things. So like it wasn't necessarily a logical on paper thing. It's just the newspaper industry consolidating, being bought up, and they were really trying to centralize a lot of different responsibilities to other areas. So I was the unfortunate one of the people to take a hit from that. My wife and I were expecting our third child in 2 months, and
Perfect
we had just paid for a new minivan, we're not new, but new to us, cash. So it's this was really bad timing. But
you're like just a couple weeks ago would have been really helpful.
Well, that's the thing is I was in my boss's office and telling her we just bought the van and blah blah blah, and it's then goes and lays me off. It's okay, well, that would have been nice to.
Oh man.
So honestly, it was the most terrifying experience in my life because I never saw it coming. And knowing the responsibilities that were immediately thrust upon me with a baby on the way, and we got laid off in February, so shortest month of the year, and it was halfway through, and they're like, hey, you're gonna lose your insurance at the end of the month, and I'm like,
oh man,
well, we got a baby coming. I remember honestly laying in bed, especially those first couple weeks, trembling, physically trembling head to toe, could not stop it because I was so overwhelmed with fear and anxiety of how to make that jump, how to what's the next thing? When I had tried to look for other jobs, I got up in the interviews, but couldn't get the final job offering. And it's in our area, we're in kind of a rural part of Virginia, there's just not a lot of marketing jobs. So it was the reality was if I couldn't find a job when I wanted one, now I need one. It's most of my friends moved to other major cities to find the employment. And it's I was faced with a lot of decisions all at once that I really was not anticipating. And it scared me to death.
No, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, so the next question that's on my list is, what held you back from making the jump earlier? But that's kind of irrelevant because having a job held you back, from it. But I think, there is kind of an interesting, there's an interesting response. You kind of alluded to it a little bit in terms of, being in a rural area, there just weren't a ton of options. That's relatable to me where I was when I was interested in moving on. My options were become a teacher, a nurse, manage a McDonald's, or do, cross country deliveries or something, being a truck driver. Like that was about the extent of in my local area. But so I'm sure on some levels that kind of is a piece of the answer to that question.
Sure.
But, like, what is it? You're at this fork in the road now, and obviously the decision to do something is forced upon you.
Yeah.
What is it that prompts you to make the jump into doing your own thing, as opposed to relocating, or as opposed to, even shifting industries and start, what was it that made that seem like the best decision?
So I would say one thing, and this takes it a little bit of a half step back, but I think one thing that really helped prepare me is I was kind of an entrepreneur in my own role, when I worked for the newspaper, right? Like I was looking for ways to generate revenue. I was brainstorming I really owned the seat that I was in. And that gave me the opportunity to sort of flex that muscle, to build some skills, to figure out if that drive was in me, even though I didn't know that I was going to have to fully utilize it at some point.
That's great.
I think it's really important to try to take advantage of where you're at now. If this is even something in the back of your mind, for 6 months from now, a year from now, 3 years, whatever that looks like for someone listening, is to look for those opportunities in your own space. So, of course I was in the advertising industry, so I was looking at revenue generation, but if you're in a church or something, like, hey, pitch some new ideas to reach some, to reach someone, try to build something out on your own. And knowing it may fail, it may bomb, it may not get accepted by who's in charge. But start flexing those muscles and start working those muscles now, and we'll put you in a better position down the road.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, essentially, how can you be an entrepreneur now in your job?
That's, and of course you can always do the side hustle thing, right? Like you can literally have a whole separate thing going on at the same time, but don't neglect where you are and where you've already been given space and an opportunity to reach and make an impact. So I think for me, that was really the biggest thing. And then I always had that sort of entrepreneurial spirit and bug in me. So that made it a little bit easier. But I was not planning this. So it was just being thrown to the wolves and trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But I've always been pretty confident in something that I believed in. I went against the grain when I worked at the newspaper and pitching new product lines that ended up, generating, $1 million, that kind of thing, that my bosses and my boss's boss didn't believe in. But it was like, no, y'all trust me. I'm gonna rock this. And so I think to some degree it requires some confidence, and that doesn't mean you don't have some doubts in the back of your mind, but that's just part of being human. But I think when you have that confidence and your skills can back it up, or you have connections that can help support that, through mentorship or coaching or anything like that too, it can really make that transition a lot easier in general.
Yeah. That's great. So you felt like you already had the opportunity to validate your capacity or your capability in being able to do this.
Yeah.
That kind of set the stage for you to choose this versus looking somewhere else. Is that kind of a fair way to say that?
Yeah, I would say so. And it actually, my co-founder is actually the same person I worked in the marketing team with at the newspaper.
Oh,
so
great.
In our specific set of circumstances, we had worked together for a long time.
Yeah.
11 years, 12 years, something like that, when we got laid off. And she's also a believer. And so when in that period of me, praying for what's my next step and trying to discern that, when I felt like, hey, starting my own business is the thing, I went to her and said, hey, we've worked well together. We complement each other's skill sets. Do you want to make the jump with me? So, I know not everybody's going to have a partner in whatever endeavor they take. But in my circumstances, that certainly made things a little bit easier because I didn't have to do all the things on my own.
Yeah, that's great. No, I think sometimes the jump feels really lonely. I think that's a real challenge. And I think if one of two things aren't true, if you're not around other people that kind of get it, it's interesting. I kind of envision, this could be totally wrong, but I envision you being sort of like the wayward one who got a job in a corporate place while the rest of your family's out running their own businesses. And then finally you come back to the fold, which is like the opposite of almost everyone else's experience. Like for me, when I, decided to make the jump, you're crazy. Like there's no way you can afford to do any of that. You know what I mean? And I'm like, well, too bad. Like this is what we're doing, So there's almost like a defiance that you have to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that, that's super interesting. But I think there is also that layer of, you don't have to just do this on your own. You know, you can partner with other people. You can find like-minded groups or whatever. That obviously it's a piece of what I'm trying to build with this. But but there is that has been such an important piece. I know for me personally, you being in that group of, that kind of business group that we're in, that's been incredibly helpful for me, because on those days where I'm like, maybe I should go to the job board, I'll ping the group and everybody's like, no, stop it, be strong. You're like, fine, I'll figure it out, but just that voice of encouragement is super helpful.
Yeah, I think no matter what you do, you need that community and support. But I think there's something to be said, and this comes through community, but also just having proper perspective. Like I think I shared this with you recently, Matt, but it's just like sort of the memes of like being an entrepreneur or business owner, and you see like the ups and downs on a chart, and it's like you're here one day, then you're doubting yourself, and then it's like, no, I was right, like. Totally. Knowing that that's so normal that it's a meme makes you not feel crazy and like a failure on those days where you're struggling, because they're going to come. And it's just, you have to know to push through in those moments and not get in your own head. And I think that's some of human nature. I remember, the early days of my wife and I being married, and we did like a small group thing outside of church for a short period of time, a short study for parents and newlyweds and things. And it was like eye-opening, like, oh, other people have these problems. Like these things are totally normal. I was like, is something really wrong with our marriage? It's like, no, you're normal. And it's like, that just gives you that deep sigh of relief. Like, okay, it's not all me. And because again, if you're isolated in any part of this adventure, it can get messy really quick. And so whether you have one person or a group of 10 people, you need to get with someone else that can encourage you on those tough days, that can listen to you and you just need a vent. But also just have an outside perspective, because no matter how good you are and where you are in the stage of your career, like you're always going to be too close to your own stuff. Like there's nothing harder than trying to rebuild your own website or something,
Well, it makes me laugh, because I posted the branding work for Jump to Freelance, and there was a typo on the brand sheet that I posted. I didn't see it. You know what I mean? I would never have seen it. I do stuff like that
all the time. You just, you can do some things like walk away, take a break, come back to it, cold, but it's like, you're just always too close to it. Like, there's stuff that we do in our business that we run clients through all day long. And then trying to turn that around on myself, it's like,
it's impossible. That's great.
And that's where it's like you're willing to pay somebody else to come in and do it, so you don't have to work both sides of that conversation. It's so much easier to sit and answer questions and then ask them and also answer them. But definitely have support in a community, because there's so much that you go through in that adventure that's going to make you question and doubt. I just called up a buddy the other day, and we talked for like 45 minutes. Brilliant guy, works with companies that are hundreds of millions of dollars, like all that kind of stuff. And I was like, this is what I'm really thinking. We went through 2024. This is what I'm thinking about 2025. Man, what do you think? And it was validating. It was like, okay, like I might actually have something finally.
That's
It's like, I didn't talk about this earlier, but it's like, we've been around almost 7 years now. It's like, that means we started a couple years before the pandemic. So the reality is, pandemic hit, world shut down. For our business, we almost went out of business. We were trying to get every grant and everything else to try to stay afloat, and manipulating like when we were paying, based on when money was coming in. It was brutal. But the beautiful thing that came out of that period, and if I had to give advice to myself, go back and give myself some advice, it was like, it really gave us that opportunity to really focus on not just what makes us money, but what we enjoy doing, right? Like, find your joy within the passion and how to monetize it. Because there's a lot of people that are church consultants. There's a lot of people in like the marketing world. There's all those kinds of things. But for us and my business partner, we thrived in the market research world. That's what we did in the corporate space. Like the stuff we're doing with churches, we used to do in nonprofits and car dealerships and all kinds of stuff. I won like an international award for a research case study at one point. Like,
that's awesome.
All kinds of stuff. And it's like, this sounds ridiculous, but that's what we love doing. And so how do we bring that into our process? How do we monetize it? How do we make it relevant? So it's not just a bunch of like spreadsheet geeks that get this. Like, how do we bring it down to a level where it's accessible to everyone? And now it's a part of every part of our system, whether you need to revitalize your church, like you're looking at closing the doors in 10 years, or you just want to grow, but you've gotten disconnected from the community. Or you need a new website. Like, okay, well, who are we trying to reach with that website? Who lives in our community? Who is our church uniquely gifted to reach, minister to, and serve? And what do those folks need? What are their problems? What are their aspirations in life? How do we speak to them so they feel seen and heard? And so it's really become sort of the lifeblood of what we do. And because it's, we love the marketing stuff. We love like best practices and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, this is a differentiator for us. This is something we absolutely love doing. We get excited about, and it actually brings the whole process together. So like, if I could go back in time, like that's really what I would go back on, is like, don't chase the money every time. Cause we did a lot of stuff that it's like, we had like clients that we wish we never worked with. Like they paid well, but it was like, this was a bad fit. Like we did it because we could, the things that's going to get you excited to get up every day instead of like, dread the alarm going off in the morning or whatever, is where you find that joy that you're able to monetize within that broader passion, right? Like for me, it's like serving churches, but the joy comes when we can use research as the anchor to every part of the thing that we're doing. We're not just building a website anymore. We're building a website with purpose. Or we're helping, we're consulting with a church to figure out what kind of ministry needs they have in order to reach those people and serve them well and bridge those gaps. So I think that's just the differentiator, in my opinion. And it was a huge thing that the pandemic squeezed out of us. And I feel like we sort of restarted the business timeline in some ways because of that, because it was like we finally kind of started to figure out who we were and embrace our own identity as a business.
Yeah. And I love that took time. I think one of the fallacies, at least that I've found, especially early in the process of kind of jumping into something, you're supposed to know the answer right out of the gate. It's like, no, you actually should probably have no idea. And you you don't quite trip over yourself, but you're trying to build something that you love. And I think, I've actually had this conversation a few different times where somebody has basically kind of lamented that they've built a business that's a job for them now.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, but that's just a job then. Like you've lost kind of the freedom.
Yeah.
And to your point, like you've lost the joy part of it.
Yep.
So identify, what's that thing that you love? What's that thing that's just really fun for you to do? Maybe you're exceptionally good at it, and so it feels really easy. I know people that think web in a way that I don't think web. I don't enjoy web very much. I'll do it, but that's, to pay the bills kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there are some people that absolutely love it.
Yep.
Great. Lean into that. And so that's a great kind of observation and realization to kind of bring to the surface. You have the opportunity to build the business that you want to be doing, or to that you want to be in, which is a cool thing.
Well, and honestly, I think we could have gotten there faster if I had that mentor or that coach or that community earlier on. I mean, I stayed isolated too long, and it was on me to learn from my own experiences. And it's like, you get there and it's like, hey man, I'm glad we got there, but you're like, I know somebody gave me this advice like 5 years ago or 2 years ago, or whatever it was. And it's like, I wasn't ready for it yet. I didn't think it applied to me, or I knew better. And it's just, and somebody's going to ignore this advice the same, but
I mean, that's
but,
part.
But I think that's the biggest thing I've learned probably in this almost 7 years now is, my intuition is right, but my intuition is slow. And if I take the time to learn from other people, then I will get to where I want to get a whole lot faster. I will skip the grind and the struggles that can be years long, right? If you don't have that outside perspective. And the other part of that too is really be intentional about who you listen to and take feedback and guidance from. I think it's easy with a lot of gurus and coaches and consultants and all this kind of stuff, books, podcasts, all the things out there, that you start to get overwhelmed by all the different takes and pieces of advice. And so like, we've tried a lot of things over the years. And I think one thing that can really benefit folks is like figure out or find someone that you really resonate with and kind of stick with it. Don't keep chasing all the insights from all the people, because you'll end up not knowing which route you're supposed to take. And it's really hard to implement anything when you're doing that. And at the end of the day, it's like speed is what'll get you to revenue a whole lot faster, and sustainability As a perfectionist, that's one thing that's a big lesson that I've learned over the years to kind of start to let go of. I still struggle with it. I'm recovering, right?
No, definitely.
But,
good luck.
good is, done is better than perfect. So 80% of the way there or something is all you need for most stuff.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Well, that's great. I mean, it's been fun to hear your story. I mean, we've talked for a couple of years now, but to kind of dig in and sort of hear the launch point, the jump moment for you in jumping into your business it's been cool to hear that. And I know for me, there's a handful of things even I'm taking away. I'll, write down some notes a little later, but I appreciate you taking the time and just sharing your experience and your insights with this group of people who are listening. So thanks.
Yeah. Hey, I appreciate the opportunity. Again, I know there are folks that are like me in some version, that can hopefully benefit from what I've learned in the years since I made the jump. And I would love to help someone just kind of get further along than I was, especially in those early years, because I think those are formative. Those are going to be the make or break years. And if you have some good advice, if you know what to expect and what you need, it'll make all the difference in the long-term outcome.
Tyler's story is a great reminder that difficult circumstances could actually be the beginning of something incredible. One of the things I really wanted to bring to the surface, I love when he talked about investing in the place that you are. There's so much that you can do today, right now, where you are, to prepare you for your jump moment. And in some cases, the jump moment might find you, like in Tyler's story. So wherever you find yourself today, be intentional and begin pursuing investing in yourself and getting ready for your jump moment, because your jump moment might be around the corner. Might as well prepare for it. If you enjoyed this week's episode, subscribe to the channel, leave a review on your favorite podcast platform, and share it with somebody that you think would benefit. See you next time on The Jump Moment.
Thanks for listening to The Jump Moment. To find support for your jump to freelance, join our community at jumptofreelance.com.